Thank you for coming. So we have a couple of newcomers. First two classes, I spoke about the foundation of Chan, a little bit about history, but really founding attitudes of Chan practice. And I introduced a simple method of working with the breath and working with the body. Second class, I spoke about one of the two distinct methods of Chan Zen Buddhism, that is silent illumination. And this class will talk about the second of the two, that is kōan, or 画头 method. How many of you, raise your hand if this is the first time you're hearing the word 公案 or 画头. The Japanese pronunciation would be kōan. Raise your hand. Okay. Those of you who have not raised your hand, you've heard of this. Can you tell me what 公案 and 画头 is? I want to see what you have heard of it. Yes?
It's, as I understand it, it's kind of like a question. But it's not a question that you try and create a rational answer for. It's a question that you try to embody in a non-rational way.
Okay. You're able to hear that? So, he said that, I'm going to paraphrase it, tell me. It's a method to quiet the rational thinking, discursive mind. And this method involves a question. And this questioning, by questioning, engaging with this question, we don't use the rational mind to come up with answers. That's not the point. The point is to let the discursive question, the thinking mind, that is, to diminish and become one with the sense of question. Basically?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Yes, please. Mm. 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 You have to speak up. Yeah. Mm. Mm. So, kōan is a story. Usually the stories in our lives presents themselves as having right or wrong perspective. But the kōan story provides an occasion for us to see other perspective. Did you use the word analyze? Yeah. To see things analyzed from other. Okay? Anyone else? Yes. Oh. Mm.
When I was trying to explain this to someone, the question that I received was, well, what's the point of chewing on something indefinitely? Like, why would you ever want to do that? Maybe that's a quality in itself, but I couldn't possibly answer, like, what would that be good for? It's like, imagine a dog chewing on a piece of cloth forever. What's that good for?
Okay. So my teacher have used this analogy of a dog chewing on something, representing a person working on Huatou, Gong'an. And when you try to explain that to someone, they completely puzzlement. What's the point of doing that? Okay? Getting some very interesting answers. Anyone else? What Gong'an Huatou is?
It is a strong sensation. It's a sensation of sense of having to express. It's very strong. See things. So everything about this kind of sense of strong.
Okay. A sense of not knowing. Gong'an Huatou presents an occasion in which we can face this existential not knowing. Okay? Yes? Gong, public, an, case. An. Let me give okay. I have a 4-part talk. Each talk is like an hour and a half, 2 hours on Gong'an Huatou. It's on YouTube. A lot of views. So you can, if you have the patience to bear through that, then you will understand the complete history, method, experience, and a lot more other stuff working with the Gong'an. But I think I think it's necessary. So obviously we don't have that luxury. It's also not necessary to kind of go through all that. But I think it's important to give some context to Gong'an Huatou in order for us to see the efficacy of this method, why people would go through that. Okay? So silent illumination method, last class I spoke about, is a more gentler approach to practice, in which one aligns oneself with the nature and function of the mind, and cultivate a kind of attitude. Hopefully the recordings of this talk will be on YouTube after it's edited. You guys can review that. The nature of mind, the nature and the function of mind, of our mind, right now in this moment, it's already free. Wandering thoughts, scatter thinking. It's almost like residual impressions throughout the day. There's no real substance to that. It's a kind of natural functioning of the thinking brain. Right? The problem is that we reify, solidify, grasp onto the content of them and think that they really represent reality. So we kind of judge ourselves based on some kind of standard. So if you think about X, Y, and Z, then you just, all we are is just X, Y, and Z. Meanwhile, they're just words and language. They're just constructs, impressions. insubstantial. And I gave the analogy of the vast openness, spaciousness of this room and its relationship with furniture, thoughts, feelings. From the perspective of the room, it's not hindered, obstructed, whether the room is cluttered or is it very clean and tidy. The room is already free. The room is already spacious. So from that perspective, silent rumination is a sudden practice, sudden awakening, approach to Chan. Practice with an appreciation that we're already free. Yet we need to clean the room up a little bit. And the room, cluttered by furniture, doesn't really obstruct the openness of the room. Still practice it, still clean up. So as to accommodate the people that we meet, the circumstances that we find ourselves. So the relationship between the spaciousness of the room and the furniture. Huatou practice, Gong'an practice, is a completely different approach, although it's quite compatible with silent illumination in the practice of it. And theoretically, I would say, in a way, one way explain this method, it's a completely different approach, but it's also sudden practice, sudden awakening. But it comes at it differently. But the term, I want to explain the term Gong'an and Huatou first. Okay? Some of you may have heard a Japanese pronunciation of this, Zen Buddhism. Gong'an, Chinese, Japanese is kōan. Huatou is Chinese, Japanese is Huatou. So Gong'an is a Chinese legal term borrowing from a term, a jurisprudence term in the medieval China. It means case, like public case, case by case. There's two meanings. Cases that a magistrate, judge, you can consider that, but in pre-modern China, the judge is the magistrate. He does all kinds of stuff, not only a judge. So cases that present themselves to the magistrate in which he assess and avail his judgments on giving a sentence, some punishment, or liberate some people, exonerate some people. Right? So public cases. Why would Chan Zen Buddhism borrow that term? That's a very interesting question. Oh, by the way, the second meaning of this Gong'an is actually the table. The magistrate's table is called Gong'an. So it has the table where he judges, that's called Gong'an, and also the cases that present himself. Why would Chan Buddhism borrowed this term. What do the public cases refer to? And this has to do with something that the Chan practitioners of medieval time discovered, a particular pattern of process of awakening since the Buddha's time, including the Buddha, all the way down history, generations of practitioners. I'll talk about this pattern in a few minutes. And they have collected stories of these awakening cases since the beginning time. Cases of the doings and the sayings of these great practitioners. And the crescendo, the threshold of awakening, and that penetration. These junctures in the great practitioner's life. So they gathered stories about them. Condensed them into short cases of stories. This began sometime around the 10th century. And they would raise them, Chan teachers would raise them as points of departure in their talks, in their teachings. This is called Nian Gu. Pick up the ancient. Nian Gu. Nian Gu. And they will provide their insights on those cases of transformation from delusion to awakening. In verse form, poetic verse, they would create some poem. Use it as instructions, pointers to insight. Beginning of the 10th century, by the 11th, 12th century, this became such an important, pervasively widespread practice among Chan practitioners and masters, that they would compile books, collections. And since the teachers are providing their own verses, pointers to insight, they will collect those too. So they will have the root cases, which is prose story of awakening. And at the moment of awakening, the protagonist in the story will utter some words. Sometimes they will compose a poem to express their awakening. So you have, in the root cases, you have the prose and the verse. And then you have these Chan teachers' own comments about them. So that became collections of books. What did they call them? They call them kōan. just like a magistrate would prevail upon certain cases and offer their decision assessing the case, same thing with Chan masters. They will assess the awakening experiences of previous Chan masters and their verses and pass judgment on that. On the one hand, and use them as pointers to what awakening is about, how one should approach the practice. You know how in public cases there are criminals and there are culprits and victims, right? Culprits and victims. Similarly, in kōan cases, there's a protagonist and antagonist, and there are circumstances that the antagonist did that's kind of wrong, and then suddenly when the protagonist comes that you're doing that wrong, suddenly there's some kind of opening and insight. Same thing in practice. There are all kinds of things that we're doing wrong. You know, like when we're sitting, we have a lot of wandering thoughts. We think that's really bad. I'm doing a horrible job. Why am I doing that? Why am I chewing on a bone? Pointless. How do I explain that to people? For those of you who came late, we're talking about the dog chewing on the bone before, right? Chewing on some iron rod. Or all kinds of stuff. In the course of practice, things come up. What comes up? Our own habit tendencies of reifying, grasping onto something, and trying to reject something else. These polarities, tendencies, we call them vexations. They manifest when we engage in practice. When we don't practice, we think everything's fine. It's normal. Greed, hatred, jealousy, ignorance. It's normal. What do you mean? It's normal. That's because that person is not a practitioner. When a person practices, these things come up, and we need to work with them. So the comments on the past masters' cases of awakening, many times in the stories, reveal that. And it's up to the Chan master or the magistrate to expose this. And that became kōan collections of cases of awakening. They could be quite useful because Chan instructions are often not expository, explanatory, because the basic Chan attitude towards words and language is suspect. Very often, most of our vexations come from our own construct, our own attachment to our words and language, right and wrong, having, lacking, wanting, needing. So Chan explanations of teachings don't usually use an expository, explanatory, like a scripture, commentary, or tradition to explain things like that, because those way of explaining from the Chan perspective sometimes exacerbates the question. You're using words and language which are, by their nature, problematic. Concepts, words, reify notions. Like this is a gong. When you call this a gong, you can't call it something else. You call it a gong, you know? Why can't it be a elbow rester? Right? So call this good, and it's not bad. So if you explain things using words and language, usually reifies notions, solidifies ideas. It bifurcates things into this and that. That exacerbates the problem. So the way Chan explained things is often not rational, but kind of points to something that it points to the core of the problem, which is our heart, our mind. It exposes, like those kōan comments, it exposes our tendency to reify things. So it uses words in a very different way. It uses words that causes a kind of self-introspection that exposes our tendency and causes us to do something about it. That's the way Chan uses words. So it's not an explanatory model. It's what I call performative words. Performative. So student comes, teacher, how do I be free? So, to be free, you gotta study the Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path. You gotta make sure you practice generosity, because that's the first thing on the list. You gotta uphold precepts, all that stuff. That's explanatory, rational. So the Chan way is, teacher, I'm not free. I feel vexed. How do I become free? The Chan teacher will say, who's binding you? Show me what's not free. So that's more performative. Exposes the core of the problem. Who's binding you? Actually, I'm binding myself. Sorry. So it turns the question back to the practitioner. Now, by the 12th, 13th century, this has gotten to the point. It's very good in the beginning, but it's gotten to the point of, especially the literati, 士大夫, the educated elite, the officials. You have to remember, by the Southern Song Dynasty time, 12th, 13th century, Chan Buddhism has become so popular that any educated person would have to learn how to compose the Chan poem. In fact, the civil service examination in the imperial system test the kind of Chan sensibility in poetry construction. That's how popular it is. It's like mindfulness now. Anyone who's exposed with some kind of what's going on in the popular society culture would have heard mindfulness, because everyone's using it. Business people are using it to make more money. Social workers are using it. The education system, the medical field. Anyone who does not live in a bubble would know what mindfulness, have some inkling of the idea. Or like the word Zen, or like the word karma. You don't have to be a Buddhist. Something bad happens to you, your friend jokes with you, and you got some bad karma coming for you. They don't really know what karma means. So the religious tie to that word is already disembodied. It's like that in the Southern Song Dynasty. So that it got to a point that people who don't practice, they know what enlightenment is about. They know how to talk in a way that makes you sound like you're enlightened. And they would even compose poems about it. And they would write commentaries about it, which is completely defeats the whole purpose of Chan. So and this began in the 11th century. 11th century, Northern Song Dynasty. In fact, among the educated elite, just with the emergence of kōans became so popular that there's a phrase for it. You don't have to practice, but you can kind of get what the meaning is. You know how to respond to things in a Chan Zen way. It's called 文字禅, Chan of words and language, which defeats the whole purpose of words and language, right? The dismantling of words and language. So by the 12th, 13th century, by the 12th century, a Chan master, one of the greatest Chan masters in history, his name is 大会宗稿, and his teacher, probably by the Song Dynasty, the most prominent Chan master on a national scale, his teacher, 元物克勤. He composed a kōan collection called Blue Cliff Record, 闭眼录. And everyone's talking about it. Believe it or not, everyone's studying it. The Zen practitioners, Chan practitioners are actually memorizing it. So 大会宗稿 burned his teacher's woodblock prints for printing that, to ever allowing that into circulation. And he created a new method of practice. He wasn't the first one to do it, but he really amplified it. It has relationship to do with kōan, because every kōan, remember I talked about before, there's a turning point in the kōan. There's a crescendo in the kōan, which suddenly something turns. Either a turning word or a gesture that causes from illusion to awakening. The story may be long, but within the story, there's some turning things. A critical phrase or critical action. So, 话头, which 大会 really amplifies. 话 means spoken word. 头 means the source or the core, the wellspring. Spoken word has many meanings. For example, all words and language. What's the wellspring of that? What's the source of that? Like your words. Gong. Right before I said gong, where's gong? Source of that. It could mean that. It could also mean Buddha nature, awakening. The spaciousness of this room. Not the particular words like furniture in the room. Furniture exists, accommodated by the room. Precisely because the spaciousness of the room that furniture can happen. The words, the phrase can happen. So all words have the same source, and that source is free. It has other meanings as well. So in terms of the kōan, the huatou is the turning word of that kōan. The core or the toe of that phrase, turning phrase of that huatou. In other words, it's like the punchline of that story. And because charm doesn't answer things directly, in an explanatory way, it answers in a performative way that exposes the core issue of what's happening here. The huatou becomes the core issue of what's happening here. So, for example, Da Hui's own awakening, one of his most substantial awakenings. He had many. Someone asked Yu Men, from where are all the Buddhas born? Where is the place in which all the Buddhas are born? Where is the place where the Buddhas emanate? Where the Buddhas come from? Someone asked this to Chan Master Yu Men. This is a kōan. Yu Men says, East Mountain walks on water. 东山水上行. What? This one is definitely not expository, explaining anything. Right? Where do Buddhas come from? East Mountain walks on water. Have you all seen mountains walking on water? Some of you who are imaginative, think, maybe it's the reflection, you're rowing your boat, and the mountains, oh, it's kind of like walking. No. Or one day, Nanquan, Chan Master Nanquan goes out courtyard because the two camps of the monks in the monastery, the Dongdan eastern quarter, the Xidan western quarter, they're arguing over a cat. I guess the monastery has mice issues, so everyone wants the cat to stay in their quarter, get rid of the mouse. Right? So they're arguing, this cat is ours, this cat is mine. No, it's mine. No, it's ours. It was taken in by the eastern quarter. It always hangs out there. It belongs to us. Master Nanquan goes over. Supposedly, we don't know if it really happened. Cat loves Chan Masters. Right? Go to the Chan Master. Says, if you guys don't say anything about this, I want you to say something about this cat. If you don't say anything about this cat, the truth of this cat, truth of the cat, the truth of this cat, I will chop it in two. Each of you will have your part. Everyone was just scared. No, he's not going to be cutting. Oh, let's wait and see. No one says a single word. Nan Quan cuts the cat in two. His most prominent student, Zhao Zhou, was not around. Had he been around, the cat would have been saved. Nan Quan says, I did something today while you're away. Zhao Zhou comes back from some errands. And what happened? The two quarters were arguing over a cat. I asked them say something about a cat. Otherwise, I cut it in two. No one said anything, I cut it in two. What would you have done? Zhao Zhou took off his slippers, sandals, put on his head, and walked out. And on his way out, Nan Quan says, you should have been there. You would have saved the cat. That's a kōan. That's a story. And his comments on it. I'm not going to tell you the answer. I'm not going to expose it, but I'll hint at it. Not in verse poetic form. I'll just talk about it, okay? In our lives, all that we've ever known are mountains walking on water. All the actions that we do are like putting the sandal on top of the head. The way we deal with people's problems, the way we relate to other people's problems, we're constantly putting sandals on top of our head. Where do sandals belong? Are they hats? No. Sandals belong down there for your feet. But the way we treat sandals, we put it on top of our head. There are a lot of kōans like this. So when you have vexations, when you're running into difficulties in your life, when you feel anguish or anger, you ask yourself, where are my sandals? Or you ask yourself, East Mountain is walking on water now. And you see where that leads you. That condensation of the whole story into a single phrase, critical phrase, that's called huatou. Without comments, without prose, verse form, trying to analyze from different perspective, everything that we can come up with, cut it off. So Da Hui was interviewing his students. His students' response to some of his kōans, because at that time, everyone knew kōan. Everyone knew kōan. And everyone was able to respond. So the Chan teachers used kōan to test the students' understanding. So they find that something is strange among his students when he tests them. Seems like the answer is correct, but there's uncertainty in the heart of the practitioner. So when Da Hui questions further from different angles, this kōan, students are completely exposed. And they start to confess. So where did you get this answer from? I memorized it from a comment of his teacher. That led to Da Hui seeing what was happening in the nation to burn his teacher's books and ever printing it. It was only reprinted a century later in the Yuan dynasty. Da Hui was already gone. His teacher was already gone. So he wanted to stop the analytical approach to Huatou, to Gong'an. Originally, they were designed as pointers to insight, non-rational expository way, in a particular type of language. But people start to remember or memorize the answers, the language, the behaviors, and so on. There's another one, funny one. So one day, the sutras talk about all beings have Buddha nature, potential for awakening. This monk asked Zhao Zhou, does a dog have Buddha nature? Zhao Zhou says, no. It's contrary to what the sutra says. All beings have Buddha nature. That became a very famous. And this wu is no. It's not the no of yes and no, right and wrong. Not that no. So what is it? What is it? I've heard students one time, a student came in to my interview room during intense retreat. He was working on Huatou, this Huatou. He came in here and I said, presented his Huatou, and I said, what is it? What is Wu? He starts barking like a dog. The dog had Buddha nature, he goes, woof, woof. And I was like, okay. That's kind of embodiment. He's one with the question. That's not the point of Huatou. That's the process. So he's questioning, he's talking. Maybe he felt this. And when I poked around a little more, I said, so what's the backside of Wu? What's the left side? He didn't know. Ruff, ruff. Bark on the left side. I don't know why he couldn't answer. I said, go on. Later on, I found out in the Japanese Zen tradition, that's a correct answer. Have you heard this answer? If you go on some kind of Zen forum online, I found out that people do this. Try to do that, it's copying some person's answer. That's what was happening. So Da Hui burned his teachers. Blue Cliff record, which by that time was the most important one. And everyone was studying it. So what's the relationship between Gong'an and Huatou? Gong'an originally was meant to provide pointers to expose all the problems and habit tendencies, the wrong, erroneous way of approaching ourselves in life in a performative way, non-doctrinal, theoretical, in everyday life, like interactions of everyday life, pointing that, exposing that. And the answers and behaviors start to become congealed into formulaic responses. Then the emergence of Huatou took off, which is the condensation of Gong'an into a critical phrase without any comments, the purpose of which is to face ourselves. And generate or rekindle the point of the Buddhist practice. The point of the Buddhist practice can be summarized as, why am I not free? The point of the Chan message is, you're already free. But there's a disjunct here. Why am I bound? Why am I vexed? Or simply, who am I? Who am I? So it's an existential question. Huatou points to that, rekindles this, hence generating a sense of not knowing. What is it? What is it? And in that process of not knowing, this fundamental question expressed in that critical phrase could be anything, like, who's dragging this corpse around? Does this dog have Buddha nature? Where is it? Why are you not free? This dog. Or when we experience vexations, East Mountain walks on water. We encounter mountains all the time. We encounter mountains all the time. We create mountains. We create mountains upon mountains upon mountains upon mountains. And it walks with us all the time. Everywhere we go, we create damn mountains. For ourselves and for everyone, for the world. So confronting this, it points to that which is free. Where is it? But you're not free. So a sense of wonderment arises. The point is not oneness. The point is not some altered state of consciousness, meditative, ecstatic state. Totally defeats the purpose. That is a mountain. That is the sandal on top of your head. Some altered state, blissful state, that's what binds you. That's why you're not free. Whatever that can be held on to, whatever that can be privileged, whatever that we gravitate to, you're bound by that. That's where your bondage lies. So, some of the more crucial or potent huatou are always the one that kind of resonates with you. They are very succinct, gets to the point. Right? I have a student in Tallahassee, Florida. He's been with me for well over a decade, 14 years. He's old. When he met me, it was in the 70s. Now he's 80s. His sense of self is one that, his sense of identity, what makes him feel like him, is that he's a helper. He's selfless. He's a helper. Well, some people think, well, that's good, isn't it? No. Buddhist notion of no self, selflessness, has nothing to do with a person being humble, being kind, nothing to do with that. A person who is kind, who is very helpful, can still have a very strong sense of self if that is their sense of self-identity. You understand that? You hold on to it. So he's always helping other people, but he can't help himself. On the way here, driving with a student, she was talking about her father, acupuncturist. Oh, he's very good. He's been working decades. He can help everyone, but when he's sick, no, I'm fine. He just ignores his own problem. Have you seen those doctors? Like they themselves are like that. Same thing. His life was a wreck. He's elderly already. He needs to, or he should have already learned financial management. He's always lending money, giving away, and now he doesn't have any savings. Always helping, always putting on a facade to help. So the perfect huatou for him was in Gateless Barrier, case 38, I think, 35, 38, I don't remember. It's about this woman. The ancient Chinese story, it's a legend. This woman who fell in love with her boyfriend. At that time, her boyfriend was a nobody, not educated, has no money, pedigree, not so spectacular. His father forbade their marriage. She was crushed. They wanted to run away. They planned. Her name is Qin. At the loading dock, they planned to get on the boat and run away. The boy's been waiting. She never showed up. She got really, really sick. But her spirit went. At least from the boy's perspective. She came. They went ahead. They built a life. He engaged in study. He was very ambitious. He studied. He took the civil service examination, went up the ladder of success, and he was educated elite. He was an official. They had a family. They had kids. Something within his heart, he always wanted to get the father's approval, which is something. Now that he has status, he has money, he's a good husband, we should really go back to your father. She says, no, I don't want to see him again. Please, let's go back. So like a good person, like a good Confucian, goes back, presents the father. You wait in the boat. I want to formally ask your recognition for the life that I've built with your daughter. We are healthy, I have status, I'm an official now. The father just looked at him like, what? Get out. What are you talking about? You think this is a joke? Get out of my house. He says, what's going on? He says, my daughter's been in a coma all these years because of you. She's in the bedroom, on the bed. It's like, what? No, I have your daughter. Your daughter's with me. We have kids. When to get back the daughter? When that daughter saw herself in the bed, they merged. Everyone was confused. So the question is, would the real Qing please stand up? You know that song? Not Qing, but there's some songs like that, supposedly, right? What was it with the real, huh? Slim Shady. Yeah. Some kind of rap artist, right? Eminem, okay. Real person, please stand up. When my student read that story, and the way I explained it is, with the internet and our social relations, we're always putting a facade relating to other people. To this person, we're that. To that person, we're that. We have multiple persons. We have multiple sides. And we care so much about these fronts that we put up. But which one is the real you? So when my teacher read that in my book, and I commented on it, that really hit home with him. Even early 80s. Early 80s. I never seen this in the Chan records. Early 80s. He gained insight. He had a small glimpse of awakening. That's pretty old. Usually, Chan, they privilege young people. Or at least the 50s, 60s, that's 80s, something? He gained some insight. So all of you how many of you are 80 something years old? No one. That means you don't have no excuse. You have no excuse. If someone in the 80s can do it, you can do it. He found the right huatou. That's where you have to have a teacher that knows you, work with you, give you the right huatou. Which one is it? Which one is it? I'm not going to say his name. Who is this? Which one is the right person? So the way he worked on the kōan, it's not that he's repeating the story. He's relating that kōan into his own life, which is what it's meant to do. And he's questioning the most fundamental existential wonderment question. That is, who am I? What's bounding? What's binding me? Did several retreats. He's been with me for years, several retreats. He's always worked on the breath. Several retreats. After one intensive retreat, he went home. Nothing spectacular happened during the retreat. But after the retreat, when he went back to his daily life, his old patterns, and one morning when he wakes up, he's about to go off again, help someone else. That question came up. All of a sudden, bam, he dropped everything. Clarity. Along with that clarity and that grasping his identity, his self also vanished. Briefly. Came for interview. Very good. So, huatou points to the fundamental existential question. It's not about altered state of consciousness, definitely not about oneness, and you definitely don't want to analyze it. You're depending on that which creates problem too. Definitely don't want to do that. You want to ask the question in a sense of facing yourself, confronting yourself. Until all of your wandering thoughts collapse into the single, unanswerable, unfathomable existential wonderment. This is a very precious, unique state. It's not like a kind of oneness. It is a kind of unified state, but it's not a unified state that's stagnant, like sitting in the meditation for days. Not that kind of stagnant, deadening kind of oneness. This oneness pervades your whole being, yet you're able to function in daily life. It's like always present. It's always present. It's always present. So you can do research, you can talk with people, you can engage in life, but the unresolved question is always there. And because it's always there, your priority is always set straight. You know how when people, something bad happens to them, great sickness, warfare, some disaster, and people's priority are set straight. They look at all the things that they own. Do I really need all this stuff? You know what I'm talking about, right? And then the people that you argue with don't get along. Do I really need to? What is the point of bickering between other people? Humanity, our connectedness, more important. Same thing. When the presence of this, when we're facing this fundamental question within ourselves, our priorities are set straight. We're not really distracted by deluded thinking, wandering thoughts, fantasies about this and that. What needs to be done, what can't be done. But that process can be quite demanding. It may feel like you're not getting anywhere because you're not depending on that which you always depend on, which is your words and language. We solve problems with our words and language. We think about concepts. If you don't depend on that, how do we solve this? Who are we? And that process is like a dog chewing on an iron rod that has no taste. Sometimes my teacher says, it's like chewing on cotton. It's between your teeth and no taste. Usually what brings taste is our fantasies, ideas, notions, ideas. Make it very interesting. Dismantling all of that. Just confronting that which you cannot answer. It's like that. But that, Da Hui says, is the most beautiful place to be. That is the beginning of the dismantling of the crutch that we always rely on. We're already free. We're not disabled. We don't need a crutch. That's the message. So throw away the crutch. Now, if you, like I recently hurt my ankle, so I walk with a limp. Maybe I should get a cane. Right? It's not to say if you actually have a physical problem, throw away the cane, you can fall down, right? So you use that, but your original mind, who you truly are, without canes, you're not disabled. Does that make sense? So you can explain to your friend, why is a dog, chew on a bone? You don't sit there fantasizing, I'm a dog, I'm going to chew on the iron rod or a stick that has no taste. No, it's a metaphor. Metaphor for what? Confronting ourselves in such a way that's without all the props, the crutch, everything that we rely on to make things interesting. Confronting it head on, which is something that people don't avoid. What people want to do is make it interesting. They want to chew on chicken, right? Beef, vegetable, something that they like, they taste. Right? They don't want to face who they are. Who am I? What's the meaning of this life? They don't want to face that. Not interesting. I'm not interested. iron rod. Who wants to chew on that? I want to go dancing. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do that. See? So it's a metaphor for confronting that which is most important, our existential question. Facing that frontally, without adding any seasoning, without putting anything interesting can cover it, props, just facing it. What is it? What is it? Who's this dog? Where is the Buddha nature now? Where is freedom now? Why am I carrying a mountain? Why do I walk around with shoes on my head? Some people don't walk with shoes on shoes. Some people constantly put shoes in their mouth or to put their feet in their mouth. Everything come out of their mouth. It's just like putting the feet in their mouth. After they say it, I shouldn't have said that. It's like putting my feet in my mouth all the time. Yeah. How many of you feel like you do that? Yeah. The Chinese, we don't really put feet in the mouth. We put shoes on top of the head. Basically the same idea. So, why am I like that? No seasoning, no props, no distractions. Face the most raw, fundamental question, which is what all 公案 or 话头 points to. Okay? This question, this approach to practice is sudden because it points directly to what is at stake. That's why it's called sudden practice. It doesn't actually mean you're going to be awakened as soon as you work on it. This approach unlike the other methods of practice in Buddhism, including silent illumination, need to have a teacher. Needs to have a person to guide you, work with you, to know what kind of person you are. It needs to be a kind of relationship. Sometimes we can't see ourselves. So a person who's awakened, who has had some experience of awakening, like they know that, like it's like a tour guide. Like they've already traveled this road before. So they know all the pitfalls, shortcomings, the kind of problems, the wrong path going down. And they practice for many years, many decades. So they see the human nature, tendencies, right? So when you work with someone like this, sometimes we cannot see our blind spots. And they come to know you, build a relationship with you. Then they can see what will work for you. Does that make sense? So the huatou that they give you will be more efficacious, effective. Sometimes these huatou may not come from formally gong'an, but they may just create one by interacting with you. Like for example, one time I was in Wales, my teacher. After the retreat, we're in a distant, middle of nowhere, farmland, some sheep, animals, just clear blue sky, nothing, just prairie. After the retreat, we're walking. The retreat organizer, John Crook, passed away now. John Crook, teacher, and we're walking. And we see a pile of shit. We don't know what animal it is. John turns around to my teacher. Says, teacher, 师父. At that time, we didn't see any animal. He says, oh, be careful, 师父. There's a pile of shit there, poop there. And John, in that moment, says, it's very curious, with his British accent. So, here's the poop, But where's the animal? Right? And my teacher says, in Chinese, want me to translate. Basically, it says, here's already a pile of shit. What else do you need? What animal do you need? Why do you need to look for an animal, right? That's like a live 公案, 话头. Why? It exposes the tendency of, here's this, oh, where's that? Oh, where's this then? This, oh, where's this then? The proliferation of deluded thinking. This and that and all this stuff. Just bring it down right from the cloud. Bring your mind right down from the cloud. Put your face right up to the shit. Where is it? Right here. It's already happened. It's already happening here. What else do you need? Right? Where else did your mind need to go? So, John, when he said that, John went, acknowledgement. Yes. It caught him. His mind started to go in the past or future. Proliferation of ideas. And my teacher brought it right down. Right here. That's not to say, oh, should I take from this? If we analyze it, always be in the present moment. Don't plan for the future. That's his message. Don't go reflect about the past. No, that's not the point. See? Can't analyze it. In that moment, the three of us, the intimacy, the clarity, just after a 7-day intensive retreat. In that moment, what needs to be done is bring it down. Does that make sense? Yeah, don't feel there's no principle behind it, like some doctrinal theory about present moment. Nothing. See? You see smoke, you know there's a fire. You see shit, you see someone did it. Shit doesn't manifest itself. The way to respond is respond to what needs to be done, what can be done, what should be done. Oh shit, let me clean it up. That's not what should be done. Now, if a pile of shit is in the middle of a walkway, no, that should be swept up. In the middle of a field, it's nourishment. Nothing intrinsic about shit that should be there or that should be done like this or that. Does that make sense? It's all good. It's all good. Shit in the wrong place, not so good. Shit in the right place, appropriate, very good. You know that people buy shit? You know that, right? They buy shit and put it in the garden. It's called manure. And after you put it in, the whole garden smells like cow manure. Oh, it's so good. I'm so proud of my garden. What's it to shit then? Right? So, nothing intrinsically about anything. Bring it back. There's nothing intrinsic about a particular huatou, a particular kōan, which one's better, which one's worse. No. It's that relationship you build with the teacher, with fellow practitioners, that they really understand each other. And in those occasions, the teacher will present to you something that pierces right through your heart. And if you don't get it, you have to work on it. Would you like to try this as a way of meditation? Yes.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Dogen said practice is enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
And when I practice silent illumination, I can more or less practice in that spirit.
Mm.
And maybe I'm kidding myself, but I'm sitting there thinking, well, here I am practicing as best I can. At the same time, everything is okay.
Mm.
With Otto, it seems to me there's a pitfall, potentially, and that is, practicing Otto. Some teachers say, don't know, want to know, don't know, want to know, this doubt sensation.
Mm.
And that risks opposing a practice, don't know, want to know, with this result that you've heard about your student after a decade plus, he has a breakthrough. And does that mean that he spent 14 years not knowing, and then, a couple of seconds or minutes knowing? There's an opposition there.
Yeah.
Can you reconcile?
Yeah, of course. So there's an opposition. One Zen teacher, Dogen, the founder of Soto Zen, Japanese, practice is awakening. Actually, the Chinese Chan master has been saying that all along. That's so practice itself is an expression of awakening. No need to seek anything, no need to give it, no need to fix it. How does that reconcile with Huatou, which is the sense of not knowing, wanting to know? Does it risk this poses a challenge to this practice itself is awakening? Or if we can put it in what Guogu usually says, IAG. Does it challenge? It's all good. If it's all good, why are you questioning it? Right? It's a matter of perspectives. It's a matter of perspective. Silent illumination. And I mentioned about it's all good. It's practicing from the perspective of awakening. Until the self-referentiality drops away. You practice according to it's all good. Wandering thought, delusion. You don't recite it like a mantra. It's all good, it's always good. The point is to use that to expose all that we feel is not good. And then releasing that. Exposing itself is releasing. It's a big difference. Okay? So when we have the view that it's all good, we don't use it to hypnotize ourselves, convince ourselves that it's all good. We have to discover it for ourselves. We know the truth, that everything is all right. But when we don't feel all right, we have to expose that. Exposing that, like a furniture, don't get caught up with it. Allow it to be completely embraced. Then the furniture no longer poses a problem. Your whole relationship with the furniture changes, right? So you're more and more becoming the room as opposed to get caught up with the minutiae of the furniture. Does that make sense? So from the perspective of room, it's all good. And you learn to work with the furniture. Dogen never said there's no need to work, there's no need to do manual labor, no need to do generosity. He did all that. All of that. Very disciplined. It's just that you're the room. From that perspective, you face, you embrace, and you work with the furniture. That's a silent illumination approach, okay? From that perspective, the end result to engage in practice. Huatou practice also does that. You must also have the conviction that it's all good. Except it doesn't allow the path is not it's all good. We had to face it, embrace it, accept it, and just work with it. The path is, it's all good. Why does this dog have no good nature? Why? Why do I always create mountains for myself and for other people? Why do I always put shoes on top of my head? You face that. Until, it's a very unique method, until all of your life's problems, existential questions, are rounded up, because they're all related. All of our problems in life are all related to this fundamental question of me, I, mine, compacted into this ball. You press it in, press it in, you press it in, you press it in, you press it in, until you, and then you realize it's all good. So the scenery on the path looks different, but the attitude towards practice, the correct view towards practice is the same. So you compact self, the question. The point is not to become one with this that you compact. Nor the point is not to analyze it. Compress it until there's nothing left. Whereas the silent illumination, you don't compress. You just allow it to be until it just disappears. Does that make sense?
I take comfort in thinking that the very not knowing is a kind of knowing.
Not knowing is a kind of knowing.
Like the emperor's Bodhidharma, who is it stands before me,
Mhm.
don't know. And, so it's don't know somehow the answer in and of itself.
It is intellectually an answer, right? But you can't accept it because it's not your answer. That's like me interviewing a student and that student says, woof, woof.
No,
Right?
but
It's not his answer.
it is my answer because I don't know, or at least I feel like I don't, and it makes me miserable not knowing. So that is my emotionally true answer.
But if you accept that, then what do you do with all the furniture? What's your relationship with the furniture?
Tell myself it's all good. However, that may not appear or think.
It's all good, but there's an incongruence there, you see. It's all good, you have to, the end result is you're at peace. You're not oblivious. You don't know what's going on. You are very engaging. Compassion arises, but you're at peace. But if you say it's all good, it's all good, or like, it's all good, so there's an incongruence there. That means it's not good. So that means we're using it's all good to suppress something or to cover something up. So you have to let it out. You have to let it out. Let the beast out. So silent illumination approach, you give it a lot of room. The whole spaciousness of this vast open field. You want to eat grass? Here's the grass. Then you find that the animal doesn't really run away. It's kind of eat grass. Keep it out. It's all right. Right? Don't hold it in. You let it out. See where it goes. You want to eat grass? What do you want to eat? Here? Go ahead. You want to eat there? Emotionally. Not literally. Like, I feel like killing someone. You want to kill him? Go ahead. Kill someone. No. Don't do that, right? I feel like hitting someone. Don't do that, right? But emotionally, you don't suppress the feeling. You allow it to unfold in the openness of your mind, your heart. It's okay. You may tear up, you may be angry. Don't attach, don't suppress. You allow it to unfold. And you see, the more you do that, you actually see and experience the Buddha nature of grief, the Buddha nature of anger. You see it manifesting, evolving. You see the impermanence. And the juice of those emotions start to be diluted. It's not to say all emotions become diluted. Only the vexation ones. Why? Because the vexation ones is self-referential. So compassion, once self-referential, once we get ourselves out of the way, our emotions as human beings, which is natural functioning of our system, of our being, manifest without the hinder, without the obstacle of ourself in the center of it. Once that self is out of the center, then compassion flows freely. See? So it's not all emotion becomes stoic, no emotions. So emotions is transformed. So passion transformed to compassion. Anger transformed to great energy. And love transformed to, not for all beings, so just me, just my partner. Everyone else can go to hell. See? It opens up. So the silent rumination approach, deal with emotions, that comes up, open. You allow it to be, and just experience it, embody it, let it unfold. As long as we don't pick and choose, grasp and reject, follow or suppress, then we accomplish two things. We understand more about ourselves. Don't analyze it, just experience it. We come to experience ourselves in a deeper way. At the same time, we don't fall into the pit of wallowing. We can learn a lot about ourselves when we break down. And then it becomes part of our breakthrough. That's the silent illumination approach. The Huatou approach to emotions is that the energy of the emotions, we allow it to collapse, to connect to this most fundamental question. Fear, because there's a self there. Grief is because there's self there. Anger, because there's self there. Jealousy. So all these different variant emotions, you allow it to connect to the fundamental Huatou question. Allow that to take it. So the sense of wonderment, because the different shades, feeling tones of emotion is different. So the sense of wonderment, the sense of questioning, also has different shades, different experiences. It's not just one size fits all. The doubt sensation, wonderment, question. It's all different shades of it. So you allow, always redirect that into this fundamental. Okay. There is, I'll say this one last thing, and then we can just practice a little bit. Sometimes when a person practices silent illumination, it naturally transitions into Huatou, sense of wonderment question. but the quality of wonderment is different. Silent illumination, once a person opens up one's heart and mind, allow everything to unfold without grasping, rejecting, the mind naturally calms down. But after it calms down, the sense of wonder in that experiencing, embodied experiencing of openness, the nature of mind, has that quality of receptivity. Like, what is this? Has that quality. And that is a good place to kind of segue, possibly, into Huatou method. Or a person can stay with that. That embodied experiencing of openness, receptivity, of freshness, moment to moment to moment, alive freshness. Staying with that, to allow that to dissolve away self-reference, self-attachment. It's possible. Huatou, it's that wonderment about life, about this, about existence, also has that freshness quality, except it's more acute. It's more concentrated dosage. Why? Because it's tied to a particular phrase. It's tied to a particular question, a very concrete question, like who's dragging this corpse around all day long? Who the heck is carrying a mountain, creating one? Who's putting the sandal on the top of the head? Who's this dog? So it's very specific, you see? So that sense of wonderment can become like a tunnel vision, can become engulfing. Everything is collapsing into it. So silent illumination, that wonderment is kind of like opening up, if you will, metaphorically. Don't try to imagine this, right? Fantasizing about it. Don't do that. Just metaphorically. It's kind of opening up. Right? And Huatou is kind of collapsing. Everything caves into this single question. But that juncture in which there's no wandering thought, utterly clear, presence. Either one stays with that freshness, 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 without distraction. So the silent illumination, the illumination part, becomes very strong, metaphorically speaking. Until self-referencing, the habit tendency becomes very, very weak, very, very small. Then through some catalyst, drinking water, bumping into something, or seeing something, hearing something, suddenly the last bit of self-referencing suddenly drops away. Or the person can segue into Huatou. And that Huatou does not need to be a formal Huatou. It could be something stirred by the teacher. Right? When the teacher sees a person in that state, may say something to that person. You see, or do something to that person. Suddenly generates a sense of not knowing in a more intense way. Or just suddenly just drops away. See? So that's why the relationship is very important. So there's no incompatibility with the two. They have the same fundamental outlook towards words and language, and the correct view of it's all good, already free. But the course of practice may differ, but at some point, there's an overlap. There's some crossover. Does that make sense? So make yourself comfortable. Let's sit for 10 minutes. Any posture is fine. Have your leg out straight, or whatever postures. Make sure the body is relaxed. Facial muscles, especially the space between the eyes. Feel the muscles. Feel the skin relaxing. Don't think about it. Don't tell yourself to do it. Just feel. Space between the eyes, the cheeks, gentle smile, the whole face. And the neck, go to the neck. Right into the shoulders. Raise your shoulders up, inhale, exhale, let them drop. Get a good feel, bodily feeling of what is it like to relax the shoulders. And the arms, relax the chest, the abdomen, upper back, lower back. Skin, muscles, and tendons. Then feel your buttocks, your glutes. Feel the sense of weight there. The contact points to earth, your feet, your legs. Now put your hands in the meditation posture, left on top of right, palms up, thumbs touching. Take a moment to experience the undercurrent feeling tone at this time. How do you feel? Should be content without grasping anything or trying to reject anything. Everything's all right. It's all good. And now, bring forth this method. You see yourself or you experience yourself sitting, okay? And you feel relaxed. And you feel grounded. You feel connected to earth. I want you to zero in on this experience. Embodied experiencing of sitting. Not thinking about sitting, just experiencing sitting now. Now ask yourself, what is it? What is this? Our habit tendency is to go to words and language. What is this? Oh, it's A, B, or C, or it's this and that. Don't do that. Ask yourself, what is it? And just experience it. Experience this moment sitting. So there's a physical component to this question. The embodied experiencing of sitting. But this experience, who's experiencing? What is experiencing? raise that question, and then allow the question to sink in. Allow it to resonate with that sense of not knowing. Every once in a while, you ask again. You don't have to keep on asking like a tape recorder. Once in a while, ask it. Feel this question. Feel this experiencing, and you don't know. Now, you may have a wandering thought, right? Thinking of this and that. So, immediately, as that thought arises, catch it and ask, where does it come from? Where did it just go? The thoughts disappeared. Where did it go? It returned to this vast abyss of not knowing. Void. It's not nothingness, somethingness. Experience. What is that? So you're not afraid of wandering thoughts. Wandering thought come? Where did it come from? Where did it just go? And experience that. The source of thoughts. If you have no thought, then ask yourself, what is this experience? No words or language. Even the sound. What is it? You're experiencing sound. What's experiencing? And when the sound fade, after it fade, what remains? Okay, open your eyes. Show your palms. How was that? Is it strange? Any comment? How many of you were able to do this? Relax, ground, and you catch yourself, a thought, wandering thought, and then you ask, trace it back, like, where did it come from? And then how it disappeared. Where did it go? Were you able to get that flavor? Isn't it wondrous? It's like they have a life of their own. Like, who's thinking? All of our lives, we've been like a Pinocchio prior to coming to life. So it's on strings, like a puppet. The thoughts are happy, we become more excited. The thoughts are sad, we become more sad. You're controlled by your thoughts and feelings. And now you just give a lot of space. It comes and it went. You don't have to follow. You don't have to suppress them. They're so insubstantial. What is that? Yet that's been governing your life, every choice that you made. Isn't it amazing? What is it? How many of you were able to get a sense of that, sense of wonder? Raise your hand. Not knowing. Yes, Tom? Yeah.
It's the same, it's a similar thing if I've lost my keys.
Yeah.
I can't find my wallet.
Yeah.
It's that in the gut.
Yeah.
It's that angst.
Mm-hmm.
It's that.
Yeah. Stay with that. Stay with that. Except it's not keys, or we have to connect it to the most fundamental question. That is, who am I? Mm-hmm.
This feeling is
Yeah.
manifest. It's just there.
Yeah.
That's it.
Stay with it.
That's it.
Just stay with it. So in silent illumination, something just naturally arises. Stay with it. And you're coming on a retreat. So I'm going to teach you how to work with it. Right? And then you can stay with it. But the rest of you, don't stay with it. You're driving crazy if you have no instructions, right? We're on a 7-day retreat. We can generate this on my watch and work with it. It's fine. Because the natural instinct, the go-to in your life, if you're not used to working with this, is to start to think about it. Who am I? Who? And you have to go see a psychiatrist, right? You end up having to go see a psychiatrist or something. So you want to treat it like a method of practice. You have to have the ability to not grasp, not reject, in that context of it's all good. Without that context, without familiarity with the Chan view, that we're already free. And we just get caught up with what is it, who am I? It's like psychosis. What happened? I don't recommend that method. So that's why I don't give that method to a student when I don't feel that student's ready. I have to take responsibility. So unless the student can practice and I see the mental stability of that student and the concentration level of the student, then I can let the student work on that, and the correct understanding of that student. So what we've done is I just planted a little bit of seed in you. You know, like start to question, like, yeah, why do I privilege all the thoughts that I have, all the feelings, let it pull me around the ring of my nose, left and right, constantly, judging myself, judging others. Put a little question in there, a little doubt in there. Right? In the future, it will blossom. So you become free from that. But to formally use this method, you have to have permission. kōan practice, Bātō practice with a teacher. You have to have that relationship. Some people are better using silent illumination as a method. They have a natural knack with it. That person can use that method. Same. They all lead to the same. Any other questions? How was it? How was it? Sir? Good. Have you tried this before? Tried this meditation method before? Mhm. Oh, mm, I see. Welcome. Yeah. But the experiencing, when you say it's fine, like, what does it mean fine? Because usually when people work on the Huatou, they don't feel fine because they don't know what it is. Got. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, a person needs to, when they feel tension here or feel anxiety, learn to ground it. Sometimes I don't advise people to put it in the abdomen, the gut. I advise people to ground it to earth. So all the tension, allow it to settle, ground to earth. I'm connected to everything, connected to earth. So the body becomes light, light as a feather. Ground. Not telling ourselves, but to actually feel the contact points to the ground. If you're sitting, your knees, feet, your buttocks, actually feel there. So that's why I say the question must have a corporeal component to it. But for some people, putting a gut is not good. So put it to earth component. Then you won't have any side effects of tension or anxiety and so on. And also this fundamental understanding that we're free. So just facing ourselves, like, what is it? Well, I don't know. Why do I know? I'm free. I don't know. It's like it's like owning something very precious, owning something very precious. We're holding it all the time, but we don't know where it is. So it's not like, I don't know what it is. Like, there's no anxiety like that. It's already here. It's precious. You see? It's preciousness, it's freedom. It's already here. It's precious. What is it? In the beginning, it could be a source of anxiety. But for more seasoned practitioner, as we stay with it, it becomes wonderment, a sense of wonder. There's space in that. There's receptivity in that. There's miracles in that. It's wonder. There's all kinds of flavors. So, have to explore. You're not coming on a retreat, are you? Okay. It's okay. All right, anyone else? One last question. End. Yes, please. Mm. 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 How does it relate to that? Okay. The question is surrender. Is there a matter of surrendering the thought to what is or what's present? More so in silent illumination practice, not so much in Huatou practice. Right? Silent illumination last week. You have to wait till the video comes out on YouTube or something. My talk. Or search my old talks on silent illumination. In that practice, it's a kind of surrendering, openness, and embodied experience this moment. In Huatou practice, like what we did with thought, wandering thought, is okay. Don't be afraid of wandering thought. Redirect it back to the fundamental question of Huatou. See? So you don't surrender and let it fizzle out. It's like everything is reminding you back to what is it. Now, so the what is it is the core behind all questions. Like who's dragging his corpse around? Why does a dog have no Buddha nature? Why do I create mountains all the time? What is it? That's the fundamental question. So all these wandering thoughts bring it right back to me. So what is it? Okay, so you're not giving it a break. You're not letting it kind of go off, and so the body and mind become peaceful, relaxed. No, you want to bring it right back. What is it? It goes up. What is it? So the mind, the concentration congeals, the momentum. That's what we call the great wonderment. Great question. The question engulfs. So the whole path is very different than silent illumination approach. Although once a person reaches a certain point in silent illumination, there is an overlap. That sense of openness, of wonder. There is some overlap there. Does that make sense? How does one avoid analyzing, overthinking? Okay, that's two questions. First question is, how to avoid analyzing. If we can't stop analyzing it, that means we're not ready for the method. So you have to have some gongfu. You have to have some practice in which your mind can concentrate, like working on the breath. And you can concentrate without thinking about the breath. You see what I'm saying? You're just experiencing it. So if I'm going like this, do I have to think about hitting my... I'm experiencing it. I don't have to think about it. Right? So when you're breathing, you're experiencing it. So through the experiencing on a topic, a subject, which is meditation on the breath, all the wandering thoughts, the discursive nature of wandering thoughts calms, and awareness becomes more prominent. Experiencing. Does that make sense? So there's a big difference between analyzing, thinking, and experiencing, or clarity. Usually when people say, my mind is very clear today, what they're really talking about is their thinking process is clear, like they're thinking straight. In Buddhist meditation culture, when we talk about clarity, it's no wandering thought, but yet not oblivion. Right? So it's just clear. Like this room, there's no fog here, clear. Everything could be present, furniture could be present. I'm not caught up with the furniture, I'm clear. Silent illumination. See? Until the mind is so clear that furniture is not so much there anymore. That's the first question. If we can't tell the difference, or how do we stop if his mind is still racing? Use a method, a traditional method, to bring the mind calm. Second question, how do we know we're analyzing? I kind of answered it. Thinking versus experiencing. Very different, very different. Does that help? So, okay. I believe this teaching will be made available, so you can look at it, watch it, try to experience it. Most important thing is to practice, to find a community, all of you. The London Chan Meditation Group regularly practice in this space. No? Where's the space you guys practice on Saturdays? Still looking. Okay. Well, in the future, the likelihood of this space is high or no? No. You don't give me anything to work with. I'm trying to do an advertisement for you. And so wait and see. If you're on the mailing list, then okay. If you know a good venue, central kind of people, easily accessible, suggest it. So the London Chan Meditation Group has a long history, but there was some personnel change, and then the pandemic happened, and then everything went online. So right now it's kind of getting back to practicing in person again. So we're looking for a space. So we have several organizers, volunteers. Please raise your hand. So all these folks, the core, love it if all of you come and practice. Any other advertisements I should be doing? Be on the mailing list. On the mailing list. I'm not here. Usually, my center is in the United States, but I have some students here. So I come here. I try to come here once a year, but sometimes twice, or once every 2 years. But there are other teachers in our lineage that comes here to teach. So anyway, you'll get email notification about activities that we have. And if you want to understand more, there's some YouTube videos, teachings that I have. Also, Tallahassee Chan Center website, there's information.